Did you get bored in those few seconds right there? Are you watching this video on 1.2 or 1.5 speed? Do you find yourself consuming hours and hours of short-form content a week? If so, I'm afraid to tell you that you might be suffering from brain rot, just like most of the population is right now. But the good news is, your brain isn't broken. It's simply a muscle that's atrophied. And in today's video, I'm going to help you understand exactly how to break out of this brain rot and the life and the opportunity that lies beyond this mental prison that we've made for ourselves. But first, let's talk about exactly what brain rot is. I actually think brain rot is one of those terms that before anybody even explains it to you, you kind of relate to that feeling. And I've been there too. Typically, you will feel this after you've been scrolling on short-form content on TikTok or YouTube Shorts for at least 10 or 20 minutes, maybe even an hour or two. And you just think, what is going on with my brain? I feel mentally numb, yet I'm unable to pull myself away from this. My mind feels my mind feels restless, yet I feel completely unmotivated to do anything of substance or significance. Now, the short-term symptoms of brain rot are those feelings of restlessness, those feelings of numbness, those feelings of confusion and apathy. But really, brain rot actually spills out into your entire life because you begin to lose your ability to concentrate on things, to focus on difficult tasks, to do things that aren't immediately stimulating or rewarding. Now, in Brave New World, which is a great dystopian novel that I recommend to every single man watching this video, in that book, in that world in which they exist in that society, there is this drug called soma, and it's kind of like an antidepressant, but it really just makes people happy and it keeps them content. And this is taken as a physical pill. And today I would argue that soma isn't necessarily Xanax, or it's not necessarily a drug that people take. Soma is the dopamine hit that comes with consuming content, especially short-form content. It also even comes in the form of email notifications, dating app matches, Slack messages, all of this stimulation that we're constantly being bombarded with. And the companies that have designed these apps, that design these websites, they know exactly what they're doing. They're using the same kind of psychological tactics that casino operators in Las Vegas use to keep people at those slot machines pulling the lever for literally hours and hours and hours. And while people at the slot machines are entering coins and losing their money, what you're losing instead is your energy and your ability to fulfill your life's mission, do something meaningful with your life. Now, brain rot isn't as new a phenomenon as we might think. Actually, the term was first used back in the 1850s. There's a book by Henry David Thoreau called Walden, and it's based on the author's own experiences where he builds this really simple cabin out by a lake. I think it's in Connecticut. And he goes there just to remove himself really from the distractions and the chaos of society. And he says in that book that brain rot, he uses those words specifically, has spread fatally and it's spread widely across America. I think brain rot really went to a new level probably when I was growing up in the late 2000s, early 2010s. We began to see things like those dating game shows, right? Just completely moronic, mindless entertainment. Video games also became a lot more realistic, a lot more engrossing at that time. And people began to just generally spend a lot more time on the internet than they used to. They began hanging around in chat rooms, on Omegle, hanging around on Twitter, Reddit, MySpace, Facebook, all of that kind of stuff. The idea of hanging out online was quite new at the time. Skip forward about 10 or 15 years, and it was really in 2020, I'd say, that the switch in terms of how people consume media, it fell heavily in the favor of short form content from that point on. I don't know if it was something related to COVID or what, but TikTok just suddenly, it seems like overnight, it just took over the world. And then we had Instagram come out with the Reels, basically copying it, YouTube Shorts doing the exact same thing. Because these companies notice that when we push this short form content in front of people, they are hooked. They are like crack addicts for the stuff, and they cannot pull themselves away. And now we're at the situation where we have children growing up with this kind of content and in this kind of environment. And we have adults that have rewired their brains over the last few years to only feel satisfaction from things that are immediately gratifying and rewarding and high dopamine and just keep us hooked. And then within 10 seconds or maybe even less, we're moving on to the next thing. But we just can't pull ourselves away from these screens. And that feeling that our brain is turning to mush is one that we're all familiar with, but some of us are much more familiar with it than others. But some of us have been able to actually pull ourselves away to the point where I very, very seldom consume short form content. If I do, it's really for research purposes. And I find that when I open, let's say, an app like TikTok, it's just repulsive to me. I'm like an alcoholic that recovered, and if he smells a beer, it's just vile. He wants to throw up. I feel so repulsed by that kind of content. So given that, why is brain rot even a thing? Why are people consuming this kind of content? Why do they, in a way, like this feeling? Well, I'd say it's actually because it's a form of escapism. Let's say you've had a tough day at work. You come home, you lie horizontal on the couch, you open up YouTube Shorts, and you no longer have to think. In fact, you're almost unable to think while you're consuming this type of content. And it's just like any other drug. It's like the heroin user numbing the pain. It's like the alcoholic getting drunk so they can forget things that they've done or things that had happened to them. It's exactly the same with this brain rot phenomenon. But just like pretty much any other drug, when used over time, when used a lot, it will ruin your life. And I want to ask you this question. Are you giving your attention to things, or are things taking your attention away from you? We are in this situation now where people are in the habit of consuming much, much more than they create. And I don't mean that people should be content creators, but rather than consuming content, go out and create something. Go out and learn a musical instrument. Go and master a martial art. Go and become more skilled conversationally and socially. Produce something with your mind rather than just filling it with more and more information. And when your parents were growing up, the TV was considered the idiot box. That was the thing that if you looked at too much, your eyes would go square. Think about how much more powerful and absorbing online content is than the TV. And your parents were right when they told you as a teenager, put down the damn phone. It is the phone that's the problem. The irony is that your parents are probably just as addicted now to their phones as you are. Look at the boomer generation. They spend so many hours a day on Facebook, on Apple News, on games even. It's really quite ridiculous. But when you're stuck in this pattern of brain rot, this habit of consuming short form content, the idea of reading a book, sitting down with no screen for maybe even 10 minutes and just reading words on a page, that will feel almost impossible to you. I remember when I first started going to the gym, trying to do a pull-up and failing miserably. And then you do the assisted pull-ups and you slowly get there. But at first, it's just a grind and there's almost no pleasure in it. And you want to not work out. You want to go and do the things that don't challenge your ego, that don't make you feel defeated. But it's exactly the same with brain rot. And the good news is your mind is not broken. It's not actually rotted. It's more like a muscle that's atrophied and it's very much out of practice. So when you first sit down to read a book instead of scrolling, you might only really get through 1 or 2 pages before your mind wanders or it simply feels too hard. But over time, you'll be able to sit there for an hour or 2 hours and just enjoy the words on the page and the story that's happening in your mind without feeling the need for extra stimulation, without feeling bored even. And then it becomes a great pleasure to have those moments of deep focus and concentration. Now, I don't want to scare you, but if you don't get a handle on this, this will absolutely ruin your life, because you will lose the ability to put deep focus and attention into anything that matters, both at work, with the conversations that you have with your family, with your ability to actually learn any new skill. If you're interested in starting a business, that's going to require so many hours of deep, focused work and strategic thinking that you just can't do on a shallow, brain rot kind of level. And this is one of the reasons why I'm very much against using AI for a lot of business-related stuff or creative stuff, because you're atrophying the muscle within you that could write the page, that could write the email, the muscle that could come up with an image or a name for something or do research for a product. The more that you just rely on other people to do these things for you, you're losing your abilities. And we're never going to be at the point where AI can produce genius type stuff. We're never going to be at the point where AI can write amazing music. We're at the point already where it can write generic kind of okay music, and I even enjoy some of the music that it makes, but it's never going to be, Iggy and the Stooges. It's never going to be Wagner. It's never going to be Miles Davis, right? People like you are the next geniuses, the next giants in business, in the arts, in literature. Only though, if you actually allow yourself the freedom of thought, the freedom of creativity. The first step to breaking free from the brain rot is to remove, or at least lessen, your use of the things that are holding you back. And I want you to start seeing it in your mind as these apps. These are my oppressors. This phone is my oppressor. I'm angry about this. I don't want this anymore. This is a negative thing in my life. I feel allergic. Now, if you're used to consuming a significant amount of short form content, or you're picking up your phone for, 10 hours a day, 100 times a day, you're checking that thing, you can't go cold turkey, or it might be almost impossible for you to go cold turkey. The first step will be to actually set some limits on the screen time, and you can even do that straight within the iPhone. Instagram, 15 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day. TikTok, 15 minutes a day. And also get into the practice of, when you pick up your phone, question, why did I pick this up? Is there actually a deliberate purpose? Do I need to do something here? Or did I just experience boredom for a second and immediately reach that impulse turned into an action, because I've been rewarded over time that when I feel bored, I can pick this thing up and I'm no longer bored. But instead, we need to embrace boredom. You look at so many great men throughout history, whether it was Albert Einstein, Winston Churchill, even Steve Jobs more recently, they embraced boredom. They understood the power of boredom, because when you allow your mind to be quiet and still, that's when it begins thinking on a deeper level. That's when it begins thinking on a more creative level. So there's a double-edged sword here of, you remove the distractions, you remove that soma, that dopamine, and then you begin to feel bored, and there's a vacuum. There's a vacuum for a brief period of time. But then what comes to fill that vacuum are just your greatest thoughts and ideas, and also a sense of mental peace and clarity that can become addictive in its own right, and addictive in the best possible way. I look forward so much to those moments where I can just sit and maybe smoke a cigar, or people watch, or just look out at the beautiful sky and have those moments of stillness. To me, that is one of life's greatest luxuries. Actually, that's a privilege, that we don't have to work in a factory 15 hours a day in the Western world. We actually have some leisure time, but instead we're giving it to the new oppressors. We're giving it to the social media companies that are just selling your attention for advertising dollars. And I hope you don't think it's hypocritical of me to be on some kind of pedestal against all of this stuff. Obviously, I make content. I even make some short form content. I do genuinely believe that the content I make is quite low dopamine. It's quite low stimulus. And if you're still watching this video at this point, you probably have a decent attention span. I'll be curious to see how many of you actually make it through to the end, because I deliberately keep my videos relatively low dopamine. I could hire an editor that would throw all these graphics and sound effects on the screen to keep you guys hooked and engaged. But ultimately, I don't really want that. I want an audience of people that have an attention span. I want an audience of people that are intelligent. And to take things a step further, in the Gentleman's Institution, this is my private community, and we have courses in there where it's me presenting slides that I've designed, and I'm talking through specific action steps that people can do in their real lives. It's not about consuming content for the sake of entertainment. It's not about consuming content for the sake of consuming. It's so that you get the steps, that you get the blueprint, the guidance that you need to go out and live as a modern gentleman. And we have group calls within there that require you to sit and be focused and to listen to other people. I've noticed that people that struggle with brain rot, they can't even sit at a dinner table. They can't even sit and just have a deep conversation for an hour or two without reaching for their phones. Because the moment the conversation maybe dies down a little bit, or they aren't speaking, or it goes onto a topic that they're slightly less interested in, that impulse hits them, they pull out the phone, and they're hooked on that dopamine again. And I see this all the time when I'm riding the elevator. People will be waiting for the elevator, and if it takes more than 2 seconds for it to arrive, they pull out the phone, they go in the elevator, and they're still scrolling, and the internet doesn't even work in there. Nothing's even loading, but they're just sitting there like a rat, pulling away at the slot machine lever, wondering why nothing is coming up, why no jackpot signs are lighting up. One of the biggest flexes today, it's not a Rolex, it's not a fancy car, it's not having loads of followers online. It's the ability to have an attention span, to just be in the moment, to not be addicted to your phone. Do you know how attractive it is when I see a woman that is just sitting there and observing the world, or just walking around with no AirPods in, not looking at her phone, just being in the moment? I can only imagine how much more attractive it is for women when they see a man that isn't a dopamine-chasing rat, a man that's able to look people in the eye, a man that can engage in conversations. And if you keep staying stuck in this brain rot cycle, if you keep consuming this content all of the time, you're actually losing the skills that make us human, because you're losing the ability to think deeply, you're losing the ability to actually be in the moment, to be in our real, physical, tangible world. You're losing the ability to connect with people, both with your eye contact and verbally. And ultimately, you're actually eroding away your soul, because you're not dedicating your mind to creative thought. You don't dedicate your mind to, what did I write down here? Curiosity, wonder. Instead, we resign ourselves to consuming at a very shallow level the ideas that are regurgitated by others. I do want to leave you with a few practical ways that you can eliminate brain rot from your life. The first one is to keep your phone turned off for the first 1 hour of every single day. Stop that habit of opening up social media or scrolling first thing in the morning. That is when your energy and your focus is at its strongest. Don't give it away to pointless doom scrolling, okay? And if you have to use an alarm clock, buy an old-fashioned alarm clock to wake you up. Put it at the other side of the room. Don't even acknowledge your phone's existence for the first hour of your day. You at least owe that time to yourself. The second one is, for those of you that go to the gym, don't bring your phone to the gym. Don't use it as a timer. Don't use these training apps. Just bring a notebook and a pencil and write down the weights that you're doing. Time it on your watch or on the clock on the wall. And the side effect that will happen here is you actually are able to make conversation with other people in the gym. The gym actually becomes a new social environment for you. And yeah, most people will still have their AirPods on. Most people will still be listening to music, but there will be a few that don't. Might typically be some older people. But hey, you can make those conversations. You can make a training buddy, find somebody to spot for you. It's so much better for you. And my third practical tip, and this is really the more advanced level, is to begin a creative hobby or rededicate yourself to a creative hobby that you used to do a bit more often, but now you don't. For me, this has been playing the guitar more often, okay? For you, it could be learning an instrument for the first ever time. I think an instrument is a great one because it really is difficult to suck at something and to put all of your concentration on focus into getting better at it, because you don't get better at guitar or piano by being distracted. You might watch some videos, you might use some resources online, but ultimately where you improve is with your fingers and your mind and strengthening that connection. You can also perhaps learn to play chess. This is a very slow, very cerebral practice. If you have bad brain rot, you're going to find this very, very difficult at first, but it will train your mind out of these brain rot patterns. If your brain rot is really, really bad, you might need to start with something that is inherently more stimulating, like a martial art class, like a boxing class, maybe dancing lessons, because there is that dopamine and the energy of movement and perhaps danger, or moving to the music if you're dancing. But it requires you to be very physically present, right? You can't be using your phone while learning to dance. You can't use your phone while learning to box. You have to be in that room, and you'll be doing it with other people as well. Ultimately, by eliminating the bad habits that lead to brain rot, by developing practices that strengthen your mind, that allow you to concentrate for longer periods of time, and by embracing the boredom and the inner peace that comes with just living a slower pace of life in general, you're going to be able to move out of this nasty brain rot phase in maybe even less than a month. And I'm okay to cannibalize my own audience a little bit by saying most people would be far better off if they just deleted the Instagram app, deleted the TikTok app, deleted the YouTube Shorts app, if there even is one, or just deleted the YouTube app. Of course, I want you to watch my videos, but I'm also very happy if you decide instead to stay away from the more dopamine-fueled kind of content and be part of a community so that you can connect with me. We can have a more personal relationship, that I can connect you with other like-minded men, both online and locally. We have guys meeting up in cities all around the world. And then you can join our group calls where you can be focused, you can develop your conversation skills, you can be present, you can be inspired and energized by other people, and you can go through our educational materials that are low dopamine. They're focused on action instead. Because when you think about most content online, those creators or those platforms don't benefit whether you take any action or not. In fact, they don't want you to take action. They want you to just keep consuming. That's not what I want. I want you to be inspired and energized and get some ideas and practical steps that you can actually go out and do, and then come back and tell us how it went. Be an inspiration to somebody else. So all of that stuff is exactly what I do in the Gentleman's Institution. The link is in the description to check that one out. Just think about what you could accomplish if you had unlimited focus, if you had a calm yet sharp energy, and you had this presence about you because you're able to look people in the eye. You can speak calmly and confidently. What would you do with this extra time, with this extra energy? Maybe you'd start your first ever business. Maybe you would lose a significant amount of weight. Maybe you would develop a new creative practice, like playing the guitar, like playing the piano, like learning a language. Maybe you would put it into becoming great at dancing, great at martial arts. There are so many amazing things to do in life. One of my only regrets about life is that you only get one go around. I wish that I could just keep doing it and try out all of these different things. Sadly, if we want to become good at anything, we have to choose and we have to make some sacrifices and say, well, I would love to be great at 10 instruments, but ultimately I'm going to just be good at one. I would love to speak 5 languages, but maybe I'm just going to be good at 2. Such is life, but the very least that we can do is stop spilling our energy, stop leaking our focus to things that we all know are completely unfulfilling, and instead preserve that for our mission and our purpose in life.